I remember the story of James as if it happened yesterday, the moment when he was fully aware, consciously, that he couldn't breathe. He was caught in a terrifying realization that things were going horribly wrong. I can still picture the look of panic and sadness on the doctor's face as they told James, "I'm sorry, I can't save you." In that moment, James knew he was dying. He later shared with me how his mother's father had passed away when she was just a young girl, and his father's father had died when James was only 2 or 3 years old. But in that critical moment, as he lay there, he felt their presence. They came to him, delivering a powerful message: "You can't die. You have work to do." Let me take you back to the beginning of James' journey. He grew up in New York, in a warm and loving household. As the oldest of 3 boys, James often led the way for his younger brothers. They all followed in his footsteps in many ways, playing lacrosse, working as lifeguards, and even attending the same school, Quinnipiac, in Connecticut. But when it came time to graduate, James was the only one in his family to leave New York. He decided to start a new chapter of his life in California. It was a fresh start, a clean slate. At the age of 23, James arrived in Los Angeles, not knowing a single person. He often described it as feeling like he had just washed ashore. He threw himself into the daily grind of city life, going on interviews and navigating the challenges of being in a new place. In April of 2012, James was at a friend's birthday party. It was a Sunday evening around 9 p.m., and they were all gathered at a restaurant. Everyone was just hanging out, enjoying the night. James didn't drink any alcohol that evening. He mentioned having something simple like a ginger ale. As the night went on, slices of cake were handed out. It was a casual moment, nothing out of the ordinary. There was no reason for concern. The cake looked like chocolate, and James took a small bite, swallowing it without much thought. But something felt off right away. He later told me he initially thought something in the cake might have been raw. James had grown up with a peanut and tree nut allergy. He had never actually eaten peanuts or tree nuts, so he didn't even know what they tasted like. He just had a sense of what they smelled like, and had always avoided them. For 24 years, he lived with this allergy, aware of it but never fully understanding how severe it could be. Growing up, he always carried EpiPens, though more often than not, they were expired. After all, nothing serious had happened in over 20 years, so it didn't seem like a pressing issue. But that night, as he swallowed the bite of cake, a wave of realization hit him. He wondered, did I just eat something I shouldn't have? It was only after the fact, in the midst of chatting with friends, that he pieced it together. That casual moment, something people do countless times, turned into a nightmare. He realized there must have been peanuts in the cake. At first, James didn't have an immediate reaction, just a slight tingling on his lips and tongue. He tried to brush it off, sipping a little soda to clear the sensation. He told himself, "I'm going to head home. It's a Sunday night. I'll take a couple of Benadryl, sleep it off, and wake up fine. No big deal." So, he went home, but as he lay there, doubts started creeping in. Was he feeling warm? Was the air conditioning on, or was it just a hot night? Was he breathing heavier than usual? All of these little thoughts swirled in his mind. Was something wrong, or was he just overthinking it? Was his nervous system overreacting because of what had happened? James got up to check on his EpiPen, just in case. He rummaged through his things and found it, but it was expired. He had heard they could still work past the expiration date, but he wasn't sure. Standing in front of the mirror, he saw the signs of a reaction. His skin was red, and hives had appeared on his neck, face, arms, and armpits. It was clear now, he was physically reacting. Then, he noticed his breathing becoming more labored. He knew he had to make a decision. Things were getting worse by the minute. It was around 11 p.m. on a Sunday night in Los Angeles, and thankfully, the roads were empty. James decided to drive himself to the hospital. As he got into his car and started driving, breathing became significantly harder. By the time he reached the hospital, he practically flew into the emergency room. He walked in, approached the nurse at the desk, and managed to say, "I've had an allergic reaction. I need help." The nurse asked for his ID, and as he fumbled with his wallet, he realized his motor functions were declining. He couldn't even pull his driver's license out of the slot where his cards were kept. He later recalled, even after all these years, how the nurse jumped up immediately. Another nurse rushed over, and together they supported him on either side, bringing him back to a bed in the emergency room. Within moments, medical staff swarmed around him, working quickly to help. James later described that moment with chilling clarity. He was fully aware, yet unable to breathe. He was trapped in the terrifying thought that he might not make it. Things were going terribly wrong. Lying on that hospital bed with the medical team working on him, James couldn't speak. He stopped being able to communicate, and time seemed to lose all meaning. It just stopped. They administered Benadryl through his wrist, gave him epinephrine, and put him on oxygen. They looked into his eyes, held his mouth open, but the anaphylaxis wouldn't stop. They couldn't reverse it. James saw the look of panic and sadness on the doctor's face as they said, "I'm sorry. I can't save you." In that moment, he knew he was dying. There was no anger or hostility, no more pain. Nothing material mattered to him anymore. He was fading out, fully ready to let go. He later explained that he didn't want to die, but he had accepted it. And in that acceptance, something profound happened. As James hovered on the edge of life, he felt the presence of his grandfathers. His mother's father, who had passed when she was young, and his father's father, who died when James was just a toddler, came to him. They delivered a clear message: you can't die. You have work to do. It wasn't a voice or anything from the physical world. It was a wave of communication, an all-knowing understanding. James knew it was them, pushing him back to life. In that moment, something shifted in James. What had been acceptance turned into determination. He told himself, "No, I can't die. I'm going to fight. This isn't happening." He consciously repeated to himself, "I can't die. Not now. It's not going to happen." And in that instant, he remembers being able to take a breath. He felt himself being pulled back into his physical body. The blissful, euphoric state he had been in was gone, replaced by excruciating pain. But he kept fighting, scraping for every breath. Over the next 7 hours, James stabilized. The hives faded, and the anaphylaxis finally stopped. When he asked the nurse how long he had been there, thinking it had only been about 40 minutes, she told him, "No, you've been here for 7 hours. You're unrecognizable from when you first came in. On a scale of 1 to 10, we thought you were at a 9.5 for not making it." James was eventually discharged from the hospital. At the time, he had no idea what a near-death experience, or D, was. He just thought, "I can't believe this happened. I need to go home and rest." He even joked later that he knew he was truly back to reality when he had to pay for parking at the hospital. He went home, and for the next few days, it was all about physical recovery. His body ached terribly for 2 or 3 days after, a result of the intense pain and the amount of medication pumped into him to get him breathing again. Then James started to notice that everything had changed. On the 3rd day, after the worst of the pain had subsided, he went outside. He bent down to smell a rose, something he had never been able to do properly because his sense of smell had always been poor. But that day, he smelled the rose perfectly, and it overwhelmed him. He burst into tears, overcome with emotion. His vision felt off, like it was resetting. He avoided sunlight, and his emotional and mental reactions to things shifted in ways he couldn't explain. For 6 to 7 months after that day, James woke up not knowing who he was on an emotional, spiritual, or mental level. During that time, he had no clue what an NDE was. He had never heard the term, or knew anything about it. He was just lost, trying to make sense of what had happened. Then one day, while browsing the internet, desperate to find answers, he stumbled across a website called Ions. He read through it and saw a description of near-death experiences. It listed 30 traits: physical, mental, and emotional, and James realized he matched 29 of them. It hit him that something extraordinary had happened. He connected with a leader in the NDE community and shared his story. He told her, "I have no idea what's going on. I don't know who I am or what I'm doing. This is what happened to me." After listening, she said gently, "Oh, honey, you had a near-death experience." That moment gave James a framework to understand what he had gone through. It wasn't just about suffocating on a hospital bed. It was something much deeper. From there, James gave himself the space to explore spirituality. He had always been open to things like psychics and mediums, so he leaned into that. But there were so many layers to process: the physical recovery, the emotional integration, the spiritual aspect, and the mental challenge of functioning in society again. How does one return to the physical world after something like that? For a long time, if anyone asked James about what happened, he shut the conversation down. If he did talk about it, he only shared half the story, focusing on the medical emergency and leaving out the spiritual part, including the moment with his grandfathers. It took years for him to open up about the full experience. Even now, a decade later, he says it's still an ongoing journey of integration. It's a lifelong process. As someone who has heard James speak as an experiencer, I can tell you he believes the ND itself is only about 5% of the story. The other 95% is what comes after, how he lives his life now. By all accounts, James shouldn't have survived that night. He knows he's fortunate to be here, to have been given a second chance. And he often asks himself, what am I going to do with it? That question has guided James' life ever since. He strives to make a difference, even in small ways. Whether it's picking up a piece of trash on the street or simply being more aware, he tries to add to the positive in the world. He's not here to save the world, but he wants to operate from a higher level of consciousness, to live in a state of gratitude for everything that's happened. The main reason James now speaks publicly about his experience after 8 years of keeping it mostly to himself is his desire to give back. He made a decision to share his story openly, not knowing who might hear it or how it might help them. Maybe someone is going through a difficult time, searching for answers, peace, or comfort. If James's story can provide that, if it can nudge someone along, or offer a bit of solace, that's why he does it. He sees it as a service, a way of saying thank you to the universe. He feels he owes a debt of gratitude to something or someone for bringing him back. He doesn't know the exact reason he returned, but he's determined to live authentically and help others along the way.